Hi, it's Brian again from X Bikes. As promised, this is my second video, and this is my bike. And if you see my first video on my wife's bike, you can see that this is a little different. It's been pretty highly modified. This is an aerial rider Xclass, just like hers, identical bike. It did have the 20 amp hour battery and the 1000 watt motor with a 2000 watt peak. But all that's gone now. So anyhow, like I said in the first video, the reason I went with the aerial rider is because I planned from the very beginning to modify these bikes. So it's a quasi motorcycle e-bike, right? What I love about it is if I want it to be a motorcycle, it's a motorcycle. And I drive it like a motorcycle, in traffic, you know, whatever. If I want it to be an e-bike, it's an e-bike. And I actually have settings on my display. So it's got 5 levels of pedal assist, but it also affects the throttle. So when I'm with my when I'm with my wife and she's on her stock bike that only does about 30-something miles an hour, I can go to setting 3 and it goes like 28 miles an hour. Setting 1 goes like 10, setting 2 goes like 17 or 18, something like that. Setting 3 goes like 28, setting 3 goes like 32, setting 4 goes like 40-ish, setting 5 is unlimited. So when we do hit the bike lanes, I set it to like setting 2 or 3 so that I don't have to always be looking at I max out at about what everybody else is riding. And like I said, when we're in the bike lanes, we respect the bike lane. So anyways, let's get back to my bike. What did I do to it? The first big upgrade was the battery. This right here, full frame battery, is a 72 volt Molicel battery. And for those of you that have never heard of Molicel, it's a very high discharge battery capable of serious output. Amperage, I mean serious, and has very little voltage set. So anyways, 42 amp hours, so it's like the equivalent if you had like a 48 volt setup with it'd be the equivalent of you having like close to 57, 60 amp hours on your 48 volt setup. If I ride it pretty aggressive, I get like 30 miles off this thing. I mean just ripping around. If I'm just chilling with traffic, 45, and being light on the throttle, 50, 60 miles. If I'm with my wife, 100 some plus miles, just going around 20, 25 miles an hour. I don't even know. It doesn't even move. I'll ride for 3 days with her and I'm still be at like 100 or 98%. So that's awesome. Yeah, we gotta be doing my wife's battery here pretty soon because I am tired of having to limit our rides because of her battery. 20 amp hours just ain't enough. So like I said in the last video, you can have 65, so she'll probably have last longer than mine, which is fine. And like I said, so we upgraded to an NB Power 5000 watt motor, and it has a 10,000 watt peak. This thing is scary. It's got so much torque, and I found out the hard way that you have to really respect that throttle. Even going 10, 20, 30 miles an hour, you crack that throttle, that front end is coming up. So I have to lean into it. If I'm gonna gun it, I gotta lean into it or I'm coming up. Unfortunately for me, when I first got the bike, I cracked that throttle doing about 5 miles an hour to show my friend, and I was sitting straight up, and the whole bike, I was looking up at the sky, and I ended up having to drop it to the side where it was coming down on me. Yeah, this has torque, but it is fun. I have taken it to the top speed once, just to see what it would do. Yeah, it's scary. More so than a motorcycle, because in your mind, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this is a bike, this should not be doing this. So I keep it, you know, 45, 50 is fine, but I love the torque because it gets there. I am telling you right now, this thing will beat almost anything from 0 to 50. It's only about a 150-pound bike, and it has so much torque. It gets there in like 2.5 seconds. I mean, fast, quick. So the other upgrade we did, as I talked about in the first video, is got rid of that stock crap shock aerial rider that's dangerous as hell to this air shock. And I'll put links to all this stuff in my at the end of my, or in the comment section of the video. But anyways, yeah, we switched to this air shock, and now it rides like a Mercedes-Benz. It just cushions, you know, the potholes and whatever. Before, with the stock shock, you hit something, a speed bump or anything, it would throw you off the bike, or at least you'd come off that seat. It just catapults you because it just had so much compression. Too stiff, way too stiff of a spring. So the other thing we did is replace the lights. I'm going to show you the light setup. Okay, so we replaced the light, front light, and put blinkers in the front, which are really cool. And if you look at the back, new tail lights. I don't know if you can see them in the daytime, but they're really cool too. Is this bad boy right here. It is a Sabvoton controller, 150 amp Sabvoton controller that's been unlocked for a bomber bike that really is a 300 amp controller. So what I have been doing, and this motor can handle a lot more than 150 amps, okay? This motor probably set around 200, no problem. I have been, when I first got the bike, we started at 100 amps, and I've been walking it up slowly just to make sure, you know, everything's, I don't want to blow anything, right? So right now we have it up to the stock 150. I'm going to be pumping it up another 10 or 15 amps here very soon, and we're going to try that for a week or two, and every week or two about 100, you know, I mean 100, yeah, 10 or 15 amps, probably to a max of like 180, 185. It's almost too crazy right now, but it can always be just a little bit crazy. So we'll probably go another 10 or 15 or 20. The other thing I did is put a little 2-bag setup here that looks really cool. I love. Oh, and then the tires. If you look at my tires, let's go to the front tire. These are definitely not e-bike tires. These are motorcycle tires. This was one of the first major challenges, was these tires. They are amazing. They grip like glue. I can literally almost scrape my pedals. I can almost scrape my pedals going around corners, and it just, I don't have any fear whatsoever about my bike coming out from under me, which I had with the stock tires all the time, even when it was stock. I would look ahead for anything loose if I was making a turn because they are not grippy. That would be definitely another upgrade. If, well, it's a must. If you're going to do something like this, you have to get different tires. You're not going to want e-bike tires. Now, if you come back here, and here was some of the major challenges. This back tire did not fit. And if you look right here at all these washers in there, we had to stretch the frame to get this in. And if you look up here, there was like no gap. And we had to stretch that frame just to get the billionth of an inch gap in there. Yeah. And it's the same on the other side, right? And the other thing we had to do, if you look here, is we have a torque arm set up going to here and another one going to here. Okay, so we got two here, and then on the other side, we have one here and we have one here. So, yeah, so we got 4 torque arms on here. because like I said in the first video, the dropout on these is a little flimsy, and this back tire would have just probably bent the crap out of the frame. Now it's as solid as a rock, and yeah, it ain't going nowhere. I do have the stock brakes on here, and people have commented on the brakes, right? Like, I am getting new brakes, but it's really not a must, because this has an e-brake on it. The motor does 80 to 90% of the braking. The brakes really only come into play at the very end when you're coming to a complete stop. As soon as I touch the brake levers, I have 45 amps of stopping power, and it's so good. I mean, as soon as I touch them brakes, you can feel it just start kicking in, and you're really not using your brakes. Very little. Like I said, at the very end to come to a complete stop, but the motor does 80 to 90% of the braking. The reason I'm upgrading to the 4-piston brakes, though, hydraulic brakes, is so when we were walking up the amps, well, we got a faulty display, and it blew the display out, killed the power of the bike. I was doing about 55 miles an hour, and I was coming into a turn, actually pulling into a complex, and I lost my e-brake, and I had to rely on my hydraulic brakes, which did the job, but not quite as good. And I thought I was going to go into a curb. Luckily, it stopped me enough to where I could get around it. And that's when I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to have to upgrade these brakes just in case I ever lose power again. Because when I lost that thing, I had to rely on the stock brakes. And they did the job, but yeah, I would want something a little better. And so I'm going to be doing that.